Yeah, all right. I'm just gonna record a little study session. Um, I decided to look at like a new pattern because I really want to get to studying rivers more. And like I saw or I realized I've studied turn probes quite a bit. I've studied turn delays very extensively the past week. So I think like the line after check, check, flop, check, check, turn, and then it gets to the river. I should have a pretty good grasp of what the ranges are because I know what big blind has to check on the turn. When he's got the option to probe, I know roughly what the button would check back on the turn. And yeah, I'm just going to look for river probes. Um, for the AI, I'm gonna change some settings in the sim here. This is like the sim. I think I have it loaded. I can load it for turn delay. I've saved like a sim here. There's some extra options on the flop. I mean, I have 25. I change it for every tree. What I'll do here is just go bet 50. I think doesn't really matter what you input here. You could say you wanna input 33 because most people in position are gonna play like a third. You could say people probably like play different sizes, and 50 is kind of captures most patterns. For the big blind, I'm just gonna leave it on automatic. I don't care about setting check raise sizings or anything. For the turn, I have like a lot of or several options here. I gave the out of position player a third, a pot, and a 2e sizing, and the in position player 25, 75, 150, pot to E, and it's like choosing three sizings, like the dynamic feature. I don't think it's very accurate, but good enough for this type of work, I assume. Now, for the river, when I set up the um, turn delay sims, I didn't really bother with sizings simply because the AI doesn't actually solve through streets. It just like solves each street based on like heuristics it took from looking at Pio sims. So it really doesn't matter if you're looking at turn solutions what the river strategy is. I guess I'll just add four sizings. I think that's okay. Just to get a clear picture. So I'm gonna add a quarter pot. Let's think. Maybe a half pot, a pot, and let's give it a 300. And I think I can say always add all in or something like that. I mean, I don't think that's really relevant. I'm just gonna add all in threshold. Wait, yeah, add the option to go all in when it's like, I don't know, something massive. I just want to see if that ever happens. Force all in threshold. Yeah, that's fine. Bet sizing merge. Okay, this is all fine. As for race sizes, I'm probably just gonna give it like two options, like a half pot and a 150. I think those capture a lot. 150 tends to be quite a huge raise. Half pot is like kind of normal small-ish raise. The reason I'm giving it multiple options here is so that like the solver doesn't feel forced to go into like a 3x pot just because it doesn't have a large enough raise sizing. So it's good. It would start betting a lot bigger if it has no other way to put all the money in. Then for in position, I think we can give it a pretty simple tree. I'm just gonna give it a 75, a 200, and yeah, we have the all-in threshold, so this should be fine. Raise sizes, I guess we'll give it a 150 also, and yeah, re-raise sizes I really don't care about. I think that's fine, and yeah, should be fine. I'm not gonna save this right now. I'm just gonna create the sim and look through some boards. Um, Obviously, we want to not look at boards that button would range bet on the flop. I gave it half pot, so it would have a checking range, but I think it's impractical to look at if you're not really gonna get there in game. So I guess 10-8 deuce. I have this pulled up. Let's look at this first. I really don't know very well what's happening on the river, so let's see. Like if we give it a turn, like a 3 or something, I would assume that out of position has is like mixing all the sizings on the turn probe, like it's using some small bets up to a 150. Let's see what it is. I don't think it's gonna use the 2e sizing, and yeah, just mixing everything. Not much small betting. Okay, the sim doesn't even have the small bet. I think it would mostly mix like 75 to 150 and then have some smaller bets. Let's just see this real quick. If we give it a 25, I think it's not going to use it that much. If we give it a 75, it's going to use it quite a bit, and then the 150 it's going to use sometimes. Which, yeah, probably you could simplify the spot to just 75 or check. I think that's fine out of position. Just to see what ranges we would get to the river with. And let's wait. Okay, more 25 than I expected. So I guess a split makes sense, like 25-75. Maybe you could go 25 in pot. Whatever you want to go for. In position, yeah, these sizes seem a bit unrealistic. I think the sizing feature is very unreliable. He's probably gonna use a lot of just 75. I mean, it does make sense to size up to like pot, just because this is a board where in position can still have a lot of like strong 10x, and those hands are a bit vulnerable. You can see it's even mixing into E. I guess I'm gonna leave these sizes as is and then look at different rivers. So let's think. Okay, I think like for an ace or a king river, I wouldn't expect a lot of polarization going on out of position. Probably what will happen is that out of position can still bet a lot of 10x, so I would assume he needs like a block sizing, and then I don't think he wants to really bet the rivered pair region that much. So he probably does have like a larger sizing, maybe like just a 75, but I would assume it's not used that much because like the especially on the ace, that's a region the button has a significant advantage in. So I don't think we really need a betting range built around that ace very often. I mean, it exists. Let's see if I'm right, if I'm way off. Yeah, so pretty much spot on. We have a lot of quarter pot sizes that, yeah, are built around a 10. You can see king 8 always checking, and then pretty much every 10 we can have is going quarter pot, almost pure. I think that's like usually what happens in these spots where on the river probe, any hand that can value bet would value bet, and then any hand that is like strong enough to check call profitably can do that. So I guess a hand like ace 9, when we check and villain bets say 75, I mean, I think that's gonna be his main sizing, then we would have a like a value beater, so it's a profitable check call and we can do it. Whereas a hand like ace 5, ace 6, those hands are closer to bluff catching when we check and face a bet, so they want to not face a close to zero EV decision and they bet outright. I think that's a fairly common pattern. Here in position actually only has bet 75. I guess the reason this happens is because out of position at the very top, like you can see here, at the very, very top, out of position has an advantage actually. So he still has more pocket threes, deuces, eights, ace 10, 10 8, because in position would always bet them at least by the turn. So then I assume the big blind will have some very large raises, and therefore when the button has a very strong hand, I guess, yeah, he doesn't even have much ace 8. He doesn't need to size it up, at least in theory. Let's see if that holds true. I'm expecting like 10% raises. Okay, it's like 6. Oh, yeah, okay. Pretty close. It's like 8.9. Even some all-ins. So here, like you can see the nut advantage is just so big because in position never has a set. So we can just jam our sets, which I think, yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's kind of hard to find. Even ace 10 jamming sometimes, which thinking about the ranges makes sense. And I guess for bluffs, we just, I don't know, take some. Do we not have like any bluff combos? We only have like a little bit of 5-4 suited that visually doesn't look like enough to me. I'm a little bit confused. Let's look at this. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I just want to see like which hands start turning themselves into bluffs. I would expect some hands like 8x to start bluffing. Maybe I just didn't spot them. Come on. It's lagging a bit because of the recording. No, with the fold. I find this view to be the clearest if I get like the 150 out of there. But yeah, I mean it's only really bluffing some 5-4. Oh, wait. Pocket fours are a bluff. For some reason in my mind I thought those were a set. So yeah, I guess blocking 5-4, that makes a lot of sense. And 5-4 is a straight. So I just misread the board, but yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Because we want to block the straight and we want to stop him from just blocker calling. So pocket fours are a logical bluff. I guess you could put fives in there too if you wanted. And wait. Now we still have like some filters on. Yeah, okay, in position. He does have some 5-4. Okay, so the ace played is very similar to what I expected. The pattern that I predicted is actually even stronger than I assumed because come on. Because out of position really has no reason to bet an ace, so the quarter pot is very frequent. So what I'm gonna look at now is how similar the pattern is on a king, on a queen. I think on a jack it's probably not gonna be very strong, but I just want to see the difference. So here we have like 19% quarter pot, and I assume on a king it's starting a little bit more big bets, but going to remain very similar. Okay, so oh no, never mind. This was the button delay strategy. For a moment, I was really shocked that it was just picking large sizings, but yeah, that's the wrong spot. Let's see. Page is unresponsive. I should have probably closed some tabs. I have like 30 tabs open. Okay, so it's different on the King River. Very different, in fact. Okay, so what holds up is that we have like a bunch of smaller bets. 10x is now worth a bet 75. So what this tells me is button has a lot more ace x than he has king x checking on the turn, which I guess makes sense. So yeah, it looks like we just have a top pair advantage. Let's look at the ranges. Just intuitively, the king looks like a very good card, but yeah, okay, big blind has a slight top pair advantage. Not very significant, but you can see 11.3 and then 10.9. But we have a like significant set and like a bit of a two pair advantage. So that means because big blind is doing very well towards the top of the range, he gets to polarize a lot more. It's very logical, but I would actually not have guessed that. I would have thought an ace and a king play pretty much the same. Maybe that pattern would hold up on a board like, say, deuce, deuce, three, seven, and then a king, because they're in position would check a king very often for showdown. But on a 10 high board, I assume he can just bet a lot of king x, and we get this pattern. Um, oh, it's actually pot, not even 75. I forgot that I gave it that sizing. So yeah, if we look at in positions, turn, delay range real quick, I think we'll see that like king x isn't checking very often, whereas yeah, like many bets with king x, whereas the big blind doesn't actually probe a king that much. He probes mostly lower cards, he probes draws, so when he has a king, like we can see it's just a square check. So yeah, actually very logical, but I would not have expected this. So let's look at something like a turn pairing card. I've seen something about like river probe after flop c-bet from in position, that these spots when the button checks back tend to be very polar for out of position. I think that pattern will hold up here because on the turn probe, the big blind would check some trips, but the button would pretty much always bet some trips, bet his trips. So therefore, I would expect us to, like us as the out of position caller, to have more trips, pretty significantly more, and therefore a polar sizing. So yeah, it seems like we're checking some trips. I think um, probably we should have a small sizing here also, but I'm not gonna bother tinkering with the sim right now. Let's see. I think it's going to be close enough to get a first impression because I just have no clue about these spots yet. So I wanna just go through them. Yeah, you can see in position, very rarely checking trips. So uh, let's think. Probably we have uh, like a 75 or like a pot sizing, I guess, would work. I would use 75 built around 10x because we have more 10x. I'm thinking of a 3 river, by the way. Just a very bricky card. And then I I would assume we have like a 3x overbet built around 8x because we have that a lot more. Also, we have like 10-8, we have deuces, which I think the button almost never has. I mean, he can river pocket threes, but that's just like a combo and a half or something. So shouldn't make a big difference. Let's see. Oh, have to make button check. Yeah, this is really laggy right now. But whatever. Come on. I am on the river. Okay. Oh wait. Still on the turn. Come on, hurry up, Wiz. Cast some spells. Okay, so yeah, we can see the 300% is starting to get used, but it's pretty much defaulting to pot and quarter, which I think like Duck Poke recommended as a default for rivers, so I guess you can't really go wrong with this. Of course, we could like investigate whether it's using pot or if I gave it the option, it would choose 75 or whatever, but I think that's not really worth exploring. If we look at trips, like we can see the 3x pot is actually getting in there quite a bit. The threshold is even down at like King 10, which can use 3x pot, which kind of seems crazy to me, but yeah, with if we filter for just trips, we'll see that it's actually kind of a relevant sizing just for this hand class. Yeah, it's like 18%. Um, and yeah, I guess I would implement this because I just don't trust people to raise my pot size bet. Um, I think the 3x sizing gets a lot of overfolds, so I would put a lot of bluffs in that simply because people, at least at lower stakes, don't really pay attention. They just see a 3x pot bet and they're like, I would call like at least a strong pair or better, but they never have a strong pair because they would bet that by the turn. So I think everyone just folds to this. But then at the same time, like I like having some value in my bluffing lines, and I think like the trips would build a preference towards the 3x pot sizing if we took out a bunch of in position raises. I mean, let's see how much he's gonna raise. I'm too lazy to note log, but I'm just gonna do a quick check of how much he's supposed to raise. Let's see. Probably not that much, but wait. Okay, trips, of course, if we filter for that, he's supposed to raise, but um, like the rest of his range, eh, yeah, like 8% raises. I guess like close to 9. He's even jamming some ace 3 or like pocket threes he can jam, but yeah, okay. Um, I think that's kind of what I would do. Just 3x the trips. Maybe I'll lose some value, maybe not, but it would be should be fine, and we would like it. I think if someone like realizes that I'm going 3x pot a lot, there's also some added EV in like them seeing me 3x trips there, because that kind of, I think that puts a lot of people in their place when they start to think you're really overdoing something, which I am in this case, and then suddenly they run into the nuts and they fold the next 5 times again. I think is kind of how this works. And I play against a lot of the same people, so that makes it more relevant. Let's look at a queen real quick. So previously I expected like king, queen, and ace to play similarly. That got proven wrong, so I guess it will just split between pot with like a 10 or better, and then 25 with. Let's see what we can 25 actually. I'm wondering what the threshold is. Um, Maybe like pocket fives or something. No, every okay, yeah, every pocket pair you can see threes starting to check, but every pocket pair is strong enough to bet a third. Then we have the 75 build around. Yeah, any 10 can do this. I guess 10-3. Like these weaker 10x are a bit weak for it, but yeah, okay. So I guess if we change the pot to a 75, then we can just bet 10x pretty much pure, and we would have like the blocks still. So let's do that real quick. No, not 725, 75. I guess this has like as an interfering factor the turned pair. Um, but yeah, okay. You can see, yeah, that the frequency of the 10x went up quite a bit. Now, the last thing I'm gonna look at on this flop is just a flush river. So let's just input like a five of hearts on the turn. And I guess I'll just look at the king of hearts and expect, what do I expect? I mean, out of position should definitely have a flush advantage once it gets to the river, because in position is betting a lot of flush draws, although out of position is probing a lot of flush draws, so maybe it's pretty even. Might be pretty evenly distributed, so I would assume there's not much point in having a pot sizing, at least in theory. Maybe in practice people bet their flush draws too much, and then it would make sense to size up a little bit. But let's say we put like a, let's do a jack of hearts and see. I think it's gonna just be a split between the sizes. Maybe like for 25, I wonder if like an 8 can go 25. I think that could be a thing. Like just 8, 9 or something, betting quarter pot. And then 75 with just a jack or better, maybe like ace 10, king 10 can get in there. Or any 10 potentially. I think any 10 could get in there. Let's see. Okay, it's actually using a lot of the half pot sizing now. It's like Jack X. Okay, yeah, so an 8 is worth quarter pot. I got that part right. And then, I mean, it's splitting pot and 75, which I would not do. There's pot and 20, pot and 50, I mean. And I'm gonna try merging those two into 75 because, yeah, I want to see what that looks like, where the threshold would be for this. Um, I think in practice sometimes you could just play your exact hand strength, but I like having a little bit of a framework, so I'm not just being super face up. I think with some sizings at the minute I am, but yeah, okay. So if we give it a 75, yeah, we can see. I thought some 10x could 75, which happens. I guess ace 10 like blocks checkbacks, so it likes to check, but then queen 10 can get into the 75, and jack 10 and below. I guess 10-9 is also getting in there. Okay, so then the 25 are centered around 8x. Pretty logical. There's more overbets, or like huge overbets, than I expected. I didn't really think this would be used, but okay. That's fine. I guess that's just a flush or better that could, or a straight or better. Yeah, okay. It could just go 3x pot. That makes sense. Like 9-7, or I guess sets even like pocket fives. You can see can go 3x pot. Now I'm gonna look at one more board. I'll look at a board that. Hmm, let's see. Let's look at some ace high board. I want to see how that works out. Like some. Let's just look at ace 7 deuce, I guess. I think like once we get to the river, big blind will have a pretty substantial top pair advantage, so he can probably bet larger fairly frequently. But we'll see about that. And by larger I don't mean just overbet, but something like around pot. I don't think we'll have too many huge sizes. Let's take a somewhat bricky run out. Like I guess a 10 is fine, and then I'll do a 3 river. Nothing too special. I think the threshold for betting on the river will be somewhere between like a 10 and a 7. I think 7x can definitely start going quarter pot by the river because in position would bet so much of his ace X, although on the turn, I think he's still checking a lot of 10x on like ace 7 deuce with a 10 turn. He's probably splitting the turn a bit. I mean, if we give him a quarter pot, he's gonna use it sometimes with a 10. If we only give him polar sizes, I think our weaker pairs, like our 7x loses value, or not value, but like it's worth less on the river, because you can see with the pot size, he's mostly just checking a 10. But I think if we replace the 2e, which is useless here, with a quarter pot sizing, then we will start to see a lot more 10x betting, which I think on this board would happen. And I think people in game, actually not sure what they do. I think they definitely bet a lot more 10x than this sim, but couldn't tell you how much they do it. So let's see if we had a quarter pot, probably using like 10% of the time or something. Oh, okay, no, never mind. It doesn't want the quarter pot. Maybe if it was like a 9 or 8 turn, it would, but that's interesting to see. Just polar on the double Broadway board. And then on the river, I guess if this is what happens for the button, then on the river we really cannot bet a 7 because he retains all of his 10x. So then I would expect the threshold to just be a 10. Let's see if that's true. Maybe king 7, but I would expect a 10 to be the threshold. And yeah, so you can see, yeah, any 10 can bet here, and then yeah, king 7 pure checking. Okay, so I guess here it's important what strategy the button is playing. If he was betting a lot of 10x, I think, like, let's, of course this is like wait, this is like not what the solver would prefer, but let's say we gave it only a quarter pot on the turn. I think that would make it start betting a lot of, make it start to bet a lot more 10x, and then potentially the threshold would shift. Let's see if that's true. Just wanna, like, of course on this board it's not really what's happening in theory, but yeah, so here you can see the 10x shifting. I just want to see like where the threshold lands now. Probably now we can bet like almost any 7 because most 10x is betting for the button. It's just that when given the option to go polar on a Broadway turn, it appears like he just the solver just wants to do that. So let's see. I think now any 7 has to value bet the river for the big blind. Let's look at the sim. Yeah, okay. Yeah, now we could never really check a 7. So yeah, only 7x checking is 2 pair. So a 7 is now a mistake to check. I thought it was gonna be somewhere in between the two, but yeah, because the button just never uses the quarter pot on the 10 turn, that's how it works out. I think if we give it like an 8 turn and let it choose sizings, then it's still gonna use the quarter pot, and then we're gonna get something closer to what I expected without manipulating the bet sizes. Oh, also I didn't look at the larger bet at all for out of position. I just got hyper fixated on this one pattern. Let's investigate that real quick, and then we'll take a look at the larger bet, if it's used or not out of position on the river. I think that's more important than hyper focusing on the threshold for quarter pot. But okay, I'm trying to isolate one variable here. Here, okay, I guess I'm just wrong and it's not really wanting to split. I mean, let's check real quick if that changes at all when we when we give it multiple sizings, because I would really expect it to use a quarter pot with an 8 here, if given the option. So you can see it's barely using like pot or larger, so let's just give it a split of 25-75. Basically just, I guess 150 it's using sometimes, but who cares? Uh, let's see. I would expect the 25 to be used. Yeah, okay, it's using it not a ton, but meaningfully, and yeah, like now we can see a lot more 8x betting. So then I think the threshold again would be a 7, but I'm not gonna check that right now. I'm fairly confident on that. What was I gonna look at next? I don't remember if I thought there was something I wanted to look at now. Okay, let's just look at like a king turn, which is gonna be very polar. Oh yeah, now I remember. Now I remember. I wanted to look at how much the larger sizings are used for the big blind, because I focused on the block too much. Now we're looking at a lot of bricky rivers. I assume if the river completes something, that probably shifts things a little bit. If I had to guess, it shifts the dynamic away from big blind betting big, and like because in position makes new nuts. So if the river was like a 9 here, then in position would sometimes make Jack 10, which I mean he would bet a lot. I guess 9-6 suited he probably opens. Yeah, he opens, so 9-6 suited. So that would make a difference. Also 5-6. And okay, we see the pot sizing is relevant here, and we can use it with like ace-6 plus pretty much. I mean, the lower a6 you can see get in there too, like ace deuce. Oh no, those are just two pair. Okay, so ace-6 plus, we can go for pot, or then we can go at quarter with some ace-x. I wonder what the weakest hand he raises against quarter pot is. I suspect because the sizing is built around like all our 7 and 8x, any ace has to raise against quarter pot. But because there's so many lower pairs, I think like king 8 should actually raise against quarter pot. Let's see if that's true. If so, I don't think anyone's really finding that in game, but looking at the sim here, it feels like king 8 is just a clear value raise. Let's see. He doesn't have it. Does not have king 8. And if he does, okay, it's a call. That's surprising to me. Even pocket jacks are calling. Okay, now that's surprising to me. Is it just that we get 3-bet a lot? Even ace-4 is calling. Jeez, okay, I'm way off with my threshold. Let's see real quick what's going on there if we raise like 66%. Let's see. 2/3 pot raise, and yeah, okay, big blind is re-raising pretty aggressively. Let's nah, whatever. I was considering to do a note lock of like not letting him re-raise much, but I guess really the issue is just that he's putting like a bunch of 2-pair in his larger sizing, and then like sets in his block, and sets in his block. So if we raised the king 8 type of hand or weaker ace, we would get 3-bet by the sim at like quite a bit. One thing I was gonna study was how much equity we need for which bet sizing. I think that's in Carrot Poker School, but who has the time to go through that? But yeah, I just want to see real quick how much equity. So ace-5 suited against a quarter pot bet has like 85% equity. So I think like in terms of equity, that would be like way enough. So okay, like one wait, one little thing I'll look at is if but sorry, if big blind wasn't allowed to raise. Uh, oh yeah, okay, I'm confusing myself. But yeah, I'm just gonna take out the raises from the big blind because I think the EV is way more than or the equity is more than we would need to raise. Like at least any ace and then probably king eight. But it's the issue that we can get rebluffed and we or like bluffed by river three bets. I think that's what trips us up. Let's see. Because I think like against a lot of players, you can assume that they like never bluff raise river, and then like it doesn't matter if you let the solver raise the ace three or not, right? When it has two pair plus, because like if you're gonna fold every time, then call and raise make no difference for two pair or better. So that's the idea. I just want to see like which hands are like strong enough to raise and not just which hands like can raise in the specific sim. And let's see. Okay, so we can no, even ace x is still mixing. Okay, that's yeah. Okay, I'm just wrong. Okay. I think we've looked at some stuff now. Uh, yeah, it's not. It doesn't seem that hard with the river probe. Like basically, weaker pairs seem to like just probe a lot because like if they check and in position bets, we would be bluff catching. Then like if the river favors in position, we can just drop the larger sizing. Like on the ace river we saw, we have no reason to bet pot ever. I mean, it was using it like 2% of the time because our advantage lies in the lower pairs, which like are I think just bad checks because then you would bluff catch. So we still want to value bet those small, but we can just drop the bigger sizing. I wonder if there are spots, I'm sure there are, where we want to just drop the smaller sizing, the block sizing. It feels like the block is quite important on most boards, but not necessarily like the 75 or pot. And the 3x seems to be kind of marginal. It seems to be relevant when there's like a turn pair, right? Like the turn pairs the board, and therefore the big blind has a lot more of those because he has to trap them on the turn probe node, but the button doesn't really have to trap trips on the delay. So I think when that happens, it's fairly intuitive to just build that 3x range centered around trips. And yeah, I mean, I'll as I look at more of these spots and I come across them, what I will look at is just like, does the small sizing ever disappear, or can we just always include a block sizing in our strategy and then decide what to do with the larger sizings if we need them or not? So yeah, hope this was at all helpful.